So let's take a look at 4.3, solving quadratic equations using the quadratic formula. So you have to memorize this formula right here. And this formula is, it says to solve any quadratic formula in standard form. So if it's given to you in standard form equals 0, again, when y is equal to 0, you're trying to figure out the x-intercepts. So in order to figure out x-intercepts when this parabola equals 0, the quadratic formula can be used. And this quadratic formula will give you the answers immediately, what the x-intercepts are. This formula is derived by completing the square and solving for x. It is a direct way of calculating the roots or the zeros or x-intercepts instead of graphing or factoring or using vertex form to solve for x. Okay, so it says, note that a quadratic equation can have 2, 1, or 0 real solutions, just like any parabola. And I will sketch examples of this situation. In order for a parabola to have 2 solutions, remember, a parabola could be, I'll just talk about parabolas that open up, but a parabola can cross twice. It may look something like that. Also, a parabola can cross the x-axis only once if the vertex is right on the x-axis, so it may look like that. Or a parabola may never cross, and that is if this situation is happening where the vertex is above the x-axis and it opens up. Okay, so let's take a look at example 1. So just remember, for all these examples you may end up with 2 roots, only 1 root, or maybe no roots. So example 1, it says solve each equation using the quadratic formula. So it's asking you to use the quadratic formula, so you have no choice. Now this isn't written in the correct order. This should be written as 3x squared minus 5x plus 2 equals 0. And you're going to use the quadratic formula for this one, but what I like to do is on the side, I like to write what a is equal to, what b is equal to, and what c is equal to. A in this case is in front of the x squared, which is 3. B is the number in front of x, which is 5, negative 5, and c is 2. And so, of course, if you're going to use the quadratic formula, you got to not look at the quadratic formula, but try doing it yourself so that you memorize it. So x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Plugging in these numbers, I get x equals negative, and then b, be careful, is negative 5 plus or minus the square root of b, which is negative 5 all squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c, which is 2, all over 2 times a, which is 3. Continuing this is x equals, a minus and a minus becomes positive 5 plus or minus the square root of, now 5 squared is just going to be 25, and negative 4 times 3 times 2, well, negative 4 times 3 is negative 12, times 2 is negative 24, all over 2 times 3, which is 6. Continuing this, I'll continue it up here, you're going to get x equals 5 plus or minus the square root of, now the square root of this minus this is 1 all over 6. So x is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 1 is just 1. I can take the square root of that, all over 6. So you're going to break this up into 2 answers now. You're going to have x equals 5 plus 1 over 6, or x equals 5 minus 1 all over 6. If you do this one, you're going to get 5 plus 1, which is 6, divided by 6, which is 1. And if you do this way, you're going to get 5 minus 1, which is 4 over 6. Or when you reduce 4 over 6, both top and bottom are divisible by 2, so you're going to get 2/3. So your 2 answers are x equals 1 and x equals 2/3. Those are your 2 x-intercepts. So as you can see, I didn't have to factor this. Okay, I didn't have to use the equation of the axis of symmetry. I didn't have to do any of that stuff in order to figure out my 2 x-intercepts. I used the quadratic formula. Now, sometimes you have no choice but to use the quadratic formula because the answers are not nice and you can't factor the thing that's in standard form. So let's take a look at this one. Again, this one here isn't given in the proper form, so I'll rewrite this as 5x squared minus 3x plus 7 is equal to 0. And in order to solve this, I have to know what a is equal to. A is equal to 5, b is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to 7. So using my quadratic formula, I'm going to use x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So x is equal to negative, and then my b is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of b, which is negative 3 all squared, minus 4 times a, which is 5, times c, which is 7, all over 2 times a, which is 5. So this is going to be x equals, a minus and a minus becomes positive 3, plus or minus the square root of 3 squared is 9, and then I have negative 4 times 5, which is negative 20, times 7, which is negative 140, all over 2 times 5, which is 10. Okay, so then when you continue, this is going to be x equals 3 plus or minus the square root of, now 9 minus 140 is negative 131 all over 10. Now if you take a look at this now, you can't take the square root of negative 131. It's actually impossible to take the square root of a negative number. So if you can't take the square root of a negative number, guess what? You can't continue this. This is actually impossible to continue. So if the number underneath the square root sign ends up being a negative number, it is impossible, so that means there are no solutions. So in order to have no solutions, something is going on like this. It doesn't cross the x-axis. It doesn't mean that the parabola doesn't exist, it just means it doesn't cross the x-axis. There are no solutions. So let's take a look at question